On those at 6:30 p.m. And also tonight in the House, they will begin debate on the trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea. The South Korean president will address a joint meeting of Congress later this week, and we will cover that, of course. Now to the House here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. On this day, we ask your blessing on the men and women, citizens all, whose votes have populated this people's house. Each member of this house has been given the sacred duty of representing them. O Lord, we pray that those with whom our representatives met during this past long weekend in their home districts be blessed with peace and an assurance that they have been listened to. We ask your blessing now on the members of this House, whose responsibility lies also beyond the local interests of constituents while honoring them. Give each member the wisdom to represent both local and national interests, a responsibility calling for the wisdom of Solomon. Grant them, if you will, a double portion of such wisdom. Bless us this day and every day, and may all that is done within the people's house this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House her approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair lays before the House the following communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, Sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on October 7, 2011 at 12:10 p.m. that the Senate passed with an amendment, H.R. 2944, that the Senate passed Senate 1639. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas, Clerk of the House.
The Chair will entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. President Obama and his liberal allies in the Senate are at it again. After proposing a new $447 billion stimulus bill last month, the President has seen the bill languish in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Why? Because there are some, even in his own party, who know that more government spending and job-killing tax hikes are not going to get our economy moving again. But the Senate Majority Leader has come to the rescue with another new class warfare proposal. That's right. He wants a permanent tax increase on small businesses and job creators to pay for a temporary stimulus program. Oh, goody. Long-term job-destroying tax increases to finance another short-term government spending program. How about we focus on creating an environment that encourages job creation by eliminating harmful government regulations that stifle hiring and by fixing our broken tax code without raising taxes? I yield back, Madam Speaker.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
The Occupy Wall Street protests have spread from New York to cities across America. As the protests expand, people are asking why. Why are thousands of Americans in the streets? Because Americans are fed up. 99% of the people are 100% fed up. They are fed up with a system that puts profit over people, that rewards the rich at the expense of everyone else. Let me give you an example. The government plans to spend $700 billion on new nuclear weapon systems over the next 10 years, even as it's proposing to cut research for Alzheimer's, cancer research, for diabetes cure, to take care of Medicare and Medicaid patients across our country. The American people are not afraid that their family is going to get killed by a new nuclear weapon. They're afraid that the killing that comes into their life comes from the terrorist, that is the phone call from a doctor in the middle of the night, that another member of their family has cancer, has diabetes, has Alzheimer's, has Parkinson's. That's the priority that we have to establish for our country. That's why 65 of my colleagues are going to introduce this effort to cut $200 million out of the nuclear weapons program over the next 10 years.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, last week, House Education and Workforce Committee Chairman John Klein of Minnesota introduced the Workforce Democracy and Fairness Act. This act is a direct response to the National Labor Relations Board's recent reckless action to rush union elections. The NLRB is again showing favoritism toward union bosses at the expense of the rights of workers and employers. As an original co-sponsor of this legislation, I am grateful to stand up against the powerful unions and their leaders. This legislation ensures employers, small businesses, are able to participate in a fair union election process. It helps workers make an informed choice. Best of all, it safeguards the privacy of workers. The right to work states such as South Carolina, workers are protected, new jobs, well-paying, are created, and votes of all citizens are respected. This legislation prevents the NLRB from limiting such freedoms in the workplace. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and I rise today to pay tribute to the University of Miami for being named as the country's 38th best university by the recent rankings in U.S. News & World Report. The University of Miami is the highest-ranked school in the great state of Florida, and it has moved up 9 spots since last year and 29 over the last decade, making it one of the fastest-rising institutions. The university's ascent in the rankings is attributed to a marked improvement in key areas, such as graduation rates, freshman retention rates, and average SAT scores of entering freshmen. I earned a doctorate in education from the University of Miami, so I take special pride in this high ranking. I ask my colleagues to join me in congratulating the university, its president, Donna Shalala, the incredible faculty, staff, and student body. This is an honor for the U and for the entire state of Florida. Go Canes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek to be recognized?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that it may be in order at any time on Thursday, October 13th of 2011, for the Speaker to declare a recess subject to the call of the Chair for the purpose of receiving in joint meeting His Excellency Lee Myung-bak, President of the Republic of Korea.
Without objection. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on the additional motion to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Any recorded vote on the postponed question will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2433 as amended.
The clerk will report the title.
H.R. 2433, a bill to amend Title 38 United States Code to make certain improvements in the laws relating to the employment and training of veterans and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Miller, and the gentleman from California, Mr. FILNER, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Today I rise in strong support of H.R. 2433 as amended, the Veterans Opportunity to Work, or the VOW Act. The objective of H.R. 2433 as amended is to use an approach that is comprehensive and it's fiscally and programmatically sound to help a broad cross-section of veterans obtain or retain meaningful employment. Foremost among the provisions of the VOW Act is Title I of the original legislation that I was proud to introduce to help put our unemployed veterans back to work. Title I targets retraining assistance to 100,000 unemployed veterans of past wars by temporarily extending their eligibility for the Montgomery GI Bill. The advantage of this approach is that we are providing a reasonably robust yet an affordable benefit without creating a new program. Other provisions in this bill continue the comprehensive approach by mandating, with a few exceptions, that separating service members participate in transition assistance program classes. Yet other provisions facilitate the alignment of state licensing and credentialing standards with the skills service members learned during their military service to our country and strengthening the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act provisions. The bill also incorporates a bill authored by the Vice Chairman of our committee, my good friend Gus BILIRAKIS from Florida, to direct the VA to collect data to determine the number of credit hours, the degrees, and the certificates earned by those attending courses under the GI Bill. Most importantly, the data collected will help us to learn how well the GI Bill benefits are positioning veterans to get jobs in today's economy and market. Provisions from H.R. 120, authored by Mrs. Virginia Fox of North Carolina, are also a part of this legislation. These provisions would extend VA's home loan guarantee program to certain surviving spouses of chronically and severely disabled veterans. I thank Mrs. Fox for her continuing advocacy on behalf of those whose support and loyalty was so important to their veteran spouses. And finally, I should point out that the mandatory and discretionary costs of the bill before us today are fully covered and are compliant with the budget rules of this House according to CBO. Mandatory offsets are covered by extending at their present rate funding fees paid by veterans using their home loan guarantee benefit and by limiting pension payments to veterans receiving care in Medicaid-funded nursing homes. These are both offsets that the committee has used extensively in the past, and most importantly, in passing a fix to the post-9/11 GI Bill by a vote of 424 to nothing in this House. The discretionary costs of the bill are covered by two additional provisions. The first eliminates the overcharging of VA by ambulance providers for transporting certain veterans, and the second holds VA employee travel, printing, and vehicle fleet cost at 2011 levels. To my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I say that this is in fact a good bill that addresses a major issue confronting the nation in a comprehensive and fiscally responsible manner with the support of the veteran service organizations. Madam Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting H.R. 2433 as amended, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from California.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I think the whole committee, and certainly the Chairman and I, agree that putting veterans to work, especially at a time of high unemployment in general, should be one of the chief goals not only of this committee but of the entire Congress and our nation. And when we may have, for example, double or even triple the already tragic unemployment rate for veterans, it becomes that much more important. Now, I've heard the description of this bill as comprehensive and as meaningful. And I was looking forward for this VOW bill, the Veterans Opportunity to Work. I was hoping it would be a WOW bill. You can laugh, George. That is a wonderful opportunity to work. But it seems, and it remains so, the HOW bill. How are we going to put anybody to work with this bill? Let me try to make that clear, Madam Speaker. Throughout the whole committee process that this bill went through, I described it as one that did not create jobs, but actually taxed veterans. Tax veterans. Remember that, Madam Speaker. You took a pledge not to vote for anything that taxed anybody. This bill does. It actually taxes one group of veterans to help some other group of veterans. And I still feel the same way about the bill as it came through the process. Now, I support all programs that will help veterans and improve their lives. And I know this bill is called a jobs bill. It is a retraining bill. Retraining. Now, we all want retraining, and we all know it's important. But I want to get people a job. I don't just want to retrain them and call them it's some great bill that puts them to work. My concern is that this bill will not get veterans hired at all. We may retrain them, who knows, but they'll have no place to get a job. And we'll have taxed one set of veterans to pay for their retraining. An increased tax for all of you who took the pledge not to increase taxes. Now, I think we have to support the spirit of the bill of retraining and try to find proper funding in a bipartisan way. And I hope that, working with our Senate counterparts, we can do that. We need proper funding for all of these programs that are so good. But the gentleman and his party don't want to ask for more money from anybody, even our millionaires. They want to tax one group of veterans who are trying to buy homes, so they'll train this group of veterans and claim they're doing jobs. Now, that's not what we should be having here in this Congress. This action will actually diminish services to our veterans. I know that my counterparts, for example, want the so-called TAP classes, the Transition Assistance Program classes, contracted out. But I don't think the time is ripe to do that. So how do we pay for this bill for retraining? This VOW bill that should have been a WOW bill but is only a HOW bill. It says to those who want to buy a home through the VA housing program that your fees, which were scheduled to go down, will not now go down. They're going to be kept high. Now, this refusal to extend a tax decrease has always been described by the party over there as a tax increase. So I will keep your language. You are increasing the taxes on one group of veterans who want to buy homes to pay for this retraining bill, which may not get anybody a job. Now, I know, Madam Speaker, you're going to tell Grover Norquist what's going on here. Get hold of him right away, because this is a violation of the pledge that he is making on all the Republicans. Do not raise taxes. And in his definition of raising taxes, it's extending fees that were going to go down that now don't go down. So that's an increase in taxes. So let's remember this when we think about the VOW bill. Let's vow to say we want to put people to work. We don't want to raise taxes, but this bill does neither. It not only doesn't put people to work, it raises taxes. So I cannot support the bill, Madam Speaker, and I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Florida.
I thank Madam Speaker. I did not know we were here today to hear a recitation of Dr. Seuss, but apparently we are. What's interesting to note is that Mr. FILNER has supported over and over and over again reaching in to fee payments to pay for funding of other programs of which he supported, like the Filipino Veteran Acts, of which I supported and in fact was a co-sponsor of that piece of legislation. And I find that it's interesting that in 2010 Mr. FILNER proposed nearly $1 billion in cuts to old age pension and aid and attendance payments to the elderly, the poor, and the disabled wartime American veterans in an attempt to provide generous payments to non-citizen Filipino veterans of the Second World War. With that, I would like to yield 2 minutes to the Vice Chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, Mr. BILIRAKIS.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of House Resolution 2433, the Veterans Opportunity to Work Act. One of our nation's most pressing concerns is job creation, Madam Speaker. I find it particularly disheartening when members of our armed services return home only to find a difficult economic climate and a civilian sector workforce that cannot translate the valuable skills that they have learned in that service. I'm so proud to have co-sponsored H.R. 2433, which will provide veterans with meaningful transition assistance, retain unemployed veterans in high-demand fields, retrain them in high-demand fields, and better link military skills to civilian jobs through licensing and credentialing. I believe that one of the greatest benefits afforded to any individual is the opportunity to obtain a quality education, Madam Speaker. As more and more of our current service members return home from active duty, many will opt to use their post-9/11 GI benefits. I'm pleased that language I introduced as H.R. 2274, and I'd like to thank the Chairman for that, was also incorporated into my bill. This common-sense language will create a tracking mechanism to ensure that the post-9/11 Educational Assistance Program is adequately providing the education benefits intended in order to ensure that money for our heroes is being spent in the most efficient and effective manner to afford our veterans an education. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, as more and more men and women return home from active duty, we must ensure that we are easing their transition back into the civilian workforce as best as we can. I believe that H.R. 2344 does just that, and I want to thank the Chairman again for introducing it. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
We continue to reserve.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Miller, reserves his time. Gentleman from California.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for the description of Dr. Seuss. He's a great citizen of the city of San Diego, where I will soon be mayor, and a great hero to all of us in San Diego. So we always quote Dr. Seuss, so I understand your appreciation and am thrilled by it. You are not quite as accurate, though, when you say where we got the money for the Filipino Veterans Bill. In fact, we got it from a completely different source. And you may or may not be accurate on my previous votes, but I never took the pledge that you have taken, Mr. Chairman. I never took the pledge that all of you have taken about thinking of extending fees as also a new tax. So I think it's a different situation. I'll yield when I'm finished, and you have a lot of time left. We're coming from whole different places. I believe in the jobs bill that is being voted on the Senate, that we should actually, in fact, not only cut programs but increase our revenue from a surtax on the millionaires in our society. So I'm there when I say we need new funds. You're the ones who keep saying, don't do anything, don't do anything, don't increase anything, don't extend this, don't whatever. You're the guys who are the hypocrites here. So don't confuse my past votes with hypocrisy. In addition, there are bills before our committee, Mr. Chairman, and you know it. There are bills that actually increase the jobs that are available for veterans. They actually take steps to increase the ability for our veterans who are defending our nation, who we owe so much to get the jobs. Besides, as you know, we have goals all over the government to hire veterans and to hire disabled veterans. Those goals are not enforced. What if we enforce those goals? We could hire thousands of veterans because it is the intent of Congress and the intent of this nation that they be given priority in the hiring process especially with public jobs. And yet we do not enforce those goals. So let's not say that this is the only way to increase jobs. There are dozens of ways, and they're in front of our committee. So let's go for a WOW bill, a wonderful opportunity to work for our veterans. Let's move off the vow. Let's move off the taxing of one part of veterans to pay for the other. Let's really create jobs for those who have done so much for our nation. I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Florida.
Since the gentleman, my good friend, forgot to yield to me during that discussion, I just want to set the record straight that H.R. 2297 on December 16th of 2003, of which Mr. FILNER was a co-sponsor, it increased, didn't just extend, it increased fees on original and subsequent use loans, which was done to finance veterans' benefits in the bill, including the burial of Philippine veterans. On the House, he enthusiastically endorsed the bill reported out of committee and again endorsed the negotiated version with the Senate. And with that, I yield to my colleague from North Carolina, Mrs. Fox, for 2 minutes.
The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to Chairman Miller for bringing this legislation to the floor. In 30 days, our country will pause to celebrate and thank the millions of Americans who have worn the uniform of the United States. As we approach Veterans Day, we should ask ourselves if this Congress is doing all that can be done for our veterans. This bill maintains our promise not only to the men and women who have served in the armed forces, but to their families as well. Out of concern that some families of veterans were being excluded from benefits that common sense would dictate that they be eligible for, I authored H.R. 120, the Disabled Veterans Spouses Home Loans Act. It is only right that these surviving spouses be eligible to receive the VA home loan guarantee, even though the veterans' deaths are not identified as service-connected, because such veterans had permanent and total service-connected disabilities for at least 10 years immediately preceding their deaths. H.R. 120 has been endorsed by the disabled American veterans who agree that this legislation is long overdue. The legislation has also been endorsed by the 2.1 million members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars who believe that allowing a military widow to utilize the VA home loan program is the right thing to do. This legislation rightfully gives disabled veterans the peace of mind that their surviving spouses will be able to benefit from the VA home loan guarantee after their death. These veterans and their families have sacrificed so that others may live freely, and for that they deserve to be eligible for this benefit. Again, I thank Chairman Miller for including H.R. 120 as part of H.R. 2433 and for the great work that the committee is doing on behalf of America's veterans. On behalf of our veterans, I urge my colleagues to support this legislation and yield back the balance of my time.
We continue to reserve.
The gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I would yield to the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Fox. I appreciate the provision you put in, but do you know the other provision increases the fees for veterans to buy their homes, that you are extending a higher fee and paying for this whole thing by taxing these veterans at a higher rate? Do you realize that that's what you're voting for in violation of your pledge to Grover Norquist?
I'm going to yield to my colleague from Florida, Mr. Miller.
I asked you. I didn't yield to him. I yielded to you, Ms. Fox. Do you know that you're voting on an extension of taxes in violation of your pledge to Grover Norquist?
As I said, I would yield to my colleague.
I don't yield to the chair. I yielded only to you.
Well,
and I'm glad. For the record, I guess you don't know what you're voting on, or you're voting against what your pledge was.
Regular order.
She did not accept my
Address
yield.
their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from California.
The gentlelady from North Carolina did not answer my question, and I guess she either doesn't know what's in the bill or she's violating her pledge, and I'll leave it at that. But once again, we need jobs for veterans in this country. There is no debate about that, and there's no debate that retraining is okay. What we are debating here, whether this is an effective way to use the floor of this House to bring a bill which will be presented as something that did jobs and does nothing, and shows the hypocrisy of this of these pledges that they're voting to extend the increase. I'm not yielding. They voted to increase.
My good friend yield.
My good friend, I will not even yield to my good friend. Even if you were my best friend, I wouldn't yield to you. But the hypocrisy of saying we can't tax anything, we can't tax anything, but when it comes to veterans who want to buy a home, their fees are going to be increased because of this bill. Now, that ought to be known to the American people, that we're going to vote against the 5% surcharge on millionaires, but we're going to go after these folks who are trying to buy their first home and have to buy extended fees. Now, who is this party? What do they call themselves? Or the people or something? No, this party is going to protect the millionaires but go after the veterans who can't afford a home. That's what this argument is about right now, under the guise of helping our veterans find jobs. Let's show the American people where reality is. I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time.
I would
Gentleman
ask
from Florida.
my good friend, the ranking member, if he would respond to a question.
Tell me what the question is.
Do you support?
The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I would ask if the gentleman from California does support Senator Murray's piece of legislation, which I believe there's almost an identical piece filed in the House by Mr. Bishop. Does he support, yes or no, that piece of legislation?
If the gentleman will yield?
I've asked the gentleman a question.
No, I don't support, because it has the same funding thing. And I don't support the hypocrisy of anybody, but especially the Republican Party, which says it's against a 5% surtax of millionaires, but will tax veterans who are trying to buy their first home.
Reclaiming my time, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Florida.
I find it quite interesting that the gentleman from California has just called the senator who is the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee a hypocrite, which I do not believe is appropriate. I believe that there are nuances and differences of which we will be able to work out, hopefully, in conference when we bring these bills together. I hope that the minority will, in fact, engage in the conference portion of this piece of legislation, because we have tried to engage them over and over outside of the committee structure to be able to give them an opportunity to give us another offset, another way to fund this particular piece of legislation, and they have not brought anything to us. So to me, it's a problem we are trying to solve. We have different ways in which we are trying to accomplish goals, and I want to put veterans back to work, helping to retrain those, in particular those that are unemployed, in this very, very difficult economic time. The overall veterans unemployment numbers are around 8.1%, and we know that the numbers with the OEF, OIF returning veterans are significantly higher. I don't believe I have any more speakers on this particular piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, I would ask if the ranking member has any more speakers on his side for this bill.
I do.
I would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from California.
And how much time do I have left?
You have 9.5 minutes.
9.5 minutes? I could rail like this for 9.5 minutes. Thank you.
From California is recognized.
Let me just correct again my friend, the chairman's. I didn't call Chairman Murray a hypocrite. I called those of the Republican Party who have taken a pledge of no taxation and voting for taxes hypocrites. Let's be clear about who I'm calling a hypocrite. Let's be clear about that. Second, there are 100 different ways to have a better bill here. I would support it with all my heart. There's bills before the committee. There are concepts that have been brought up by me and others. Let's bring a real jobs bill to the floor, and I'll be happy to support it.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to you.
If there are 100 ways to perfect the piece of legislation, why have you and the minority party not offered one, not one time in our committee? And you and I have tried very diligently during the preceding months in this Congress to try to be able to keep as nonpartisan as we possibly can, but not one time have you offered anything other than rhetoric to attempt to perfect this bill? Why haven't you offered any amendments?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me first say I do appreciate the efforts that you have made very aggressively to keep a bipartisan aura on this committee. And I think you and I have taken a whole new position in the past. We have met regularly for breakfast and for lunch. We have even paid for each other without taxing others. But you know as well as I do, I support there are other bills that should have been brought to this floor. You wouldn't bring them up. Sanford Bishop's bill, for example, which came to the committee. Mr. Bishop presented stuff. I endorsed it. I don't see it anywhere. You wouldn't take it up. You know we can't get any amendments through your committee when you tell them not to vote for them. So, come on. You know the process. You decided that this is the bill that's going to happen.
Members will comments to the chair.
I'll say
Gentleman
through
from
the
California.
through the chair. The chairman knows very well how the process works. He knows there are that we can't get amendments passed. He knows there are other bills, mainly Democratic bills, that are before the committee. Some have had a hearing, some haven't, but they haven't been brought to the floor. We get a VOW Act. We don't get a WOW Act. We get a HOW Act. That's what has been brought by the leadership of the committee to the floor. I have brought, Mr. Chairman, you've yielded me, I'll yield back here. You know, why won't you support mandatory goals for veterans or disabled veterans, as they are in legislation, as goals, 3% sometimes, for hiring? Let's make them mandatory. Do you agree to that? You ask me a question. Do you agree to mandatory goals for disabled veterans for hiring in public projects?
I do support goals.
You don't support mandatory goals?
I do support goals.
Do you support mandatory?
I support...
You asked me yes or no. Now you won't say yes or no.
Members will suspend. Members should bear in mind that the official reporters of debate cannot be expected to transcribe two members simultaneously. Members should not participate in debate by interjection and should not expect to have the reporter transcribe remarks that are uttered when not properly under recognition.
She's very good at that.
The gentleman from California.
I have great confidence on our recorder. No, I wish you would remind the chair that he asked me yes or no. I just asked him or yes or no, and he's playing games with words. And I guess it's his time, but I still reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Florida.
We continue to have no more speakers and would reserve our time until such time as the minority wishes to close.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from California.
I thank the Speaker, and I thank the Chairman. We are good friends, and we have tried to maintain a bipartisan stance, but I disagree with the way this bill is brought forth us. We have so many opportunities to increase the jobs for our veterans, and we're just not taking them. That saddens me. It's not the partisanship. We could do better. We can do better than this, and we're not taking the opportunity. And we get all this rhetoric over the taxes that we can't. If you don't extend the Bush tax cuts, that's raising taxes. If you don't extend the lowering of fees, that's a tax increase. Well, here, the same thing is being done to a small group of veterans who can't afford it, and yet that's not on the table as being part of the job. I'm sick of this rhetoric, Madam Speaker, that says we can't do any of this, we can't do any of this, we can't do this, we can't have rent review, we can't tax millionaires, we can't have a balanced approach to balancing the budget. But then we take on veterans who can't afford a home and increase their fees. That, for me, is the definition of hypocrisy, and that's why I'm against the bill. I would yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields back his time. The gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank my good friend from California for the lively debate. I would remind my colleagues that this piece of legislation did pass out of our committee with bipartisan support, 17-5. I would like to ask unanimous consent that letters from various veteran services organizations be allowed to be entered into the record at the appropriate time.
Without objection.
I thank you, and I also ask unanimous consent that all members would have 5 legislative days for which to revise and extend their remarks on H.R. 2433 as amended. I once again encourage all members to support this legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Without objection, so ordered. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2433 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the gentleman from California.
To make sure the record of breaking Grover Norquist's tax pledge is on the record, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted.
They're trying to decide whether to give me a vote here.
A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2074 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2074, a bill to amend Title 38 United States Code to require a comprehensive policy on reporting and tracking sexual assault incidents and other safety incidents that occur at medical facilities of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Miller, and the gentleman from California, Mr. FILNER, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I rise in strong support of H.R. 2074 as amended, the Veteran Sexual Assault Prevention and Health Care Enhancement Act. And the bill before us is, in fact, a bipartisan product of many months' worth of oversight on behalf of our Health Subcommittee. It's derived from numerous proposals championed by members from both sides of the aisle to improve the care and the services provided to our veterans by the Department of Veterans Affairs. Of special note is a provision introduced by our Health Subcommittee Chairwoman, Ms. Anne-Marie BUERKLE, and myself. This provision would address the findings of a Government Accountability Office report detailing the high prevalence of sexual assault incidents at VA medical facilities and the very serious failures in accountability on the part of VA leadership. As I've said before, just one assault of this nature, one sexual predator, or one veteran's rights being violated within the VA is one too many. I'm grateful to my good friend, the ranking member, Mr. FILNER, and the Health Subcommittee Chairwoman Anne-Marie BUERKLE, and ranking member Mike Michaud for the leadership that they have shown in bringing this legislation forward to strengthen the VA health care system for our veteran heroes. I now yield as much time as she may consume to my good friend and colleague, Chairwoman BUERKLE, to further discuss the provisions of H.R. 2074 as amended.
The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
I thank the chairman and thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of H.R. 2074 as amended, the Veteran Sexual Assault Prevention and Health Care Enhancement Act. H.R. 2074 as amended includes several worthy legislative proposals brought forth from the members from both sides, reflecting the subcommittee's oversight and activities to date. This bill would create a safer Department of Veterans Affairs health care system, allow for greater flexibility in VA payments to state veterans' homes, break down barriers to care for veterans with traumatic brain injury, clarify access rights of service dogs on VA property, and expand an innovative therapeutic option for veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress. Section 2 of the bill would require the VA to develop a comprehensive policy on the prevention, monitoring, reporting, and tracking of sexual assaults and other safety instances at VA facilities. I, along with the chairman, introduced this measure in response to a disturbing report issued by the Governmental Accountability Office in early June of this year regarding the prevalence of sexual assault and other safety instances on VA property and the very serious safety vulnerabilities, security problems, and oversight failures by VA leadership. Abusive behavior like the kind documented by GAO is unacceptable in any form. For it to be found in what should be an environment of caring for our honored veterans is simply intolerable. As a registered nurse and domestic violence counselor, I am all too familiar with the corrosive and harmful effects sexual and physical violence can have on the lives of its victims. It is an experience I wish on no one, much less one of our nation's heroes or hardworking medical professionals. Madam Chairman, it is critically important that we take every available step to protect the personal safety and well-being of our veterans who seek care through the VA and all of the hardworking employees who strive to provide that care on a daily basis. The provisions included in this bill would require VA to develop clear and comprehensive criteria with respect to the reporting of instances for both clinical and law enforcement personnel, a comprehensive policy on reporting and tracking, risk assessment tools, a mandatory safety awareness and preparedness training program for employees, appropriate physical security precautions, and a centralized and accountable oversight system. Madam Chair, I am confident that these new requirements will resolve the many wrongs uncovered by the GAO and ensure that the VA healthcare system remains a safe haven of healing for our honored veterans. Madam Chairman, Section 3 of the bill would allow for increased flexibility in establishing rates for reimbursement of state homes for nursing home care provided to veterans with a service-connected disability, rated at 70% or greater, or in such need of care due to a service-connected condition. State veteran homes have a long history of providing high-quality care to some of our nation's most vulnerable veterans. By requiring the VA to enter into a contract or agreement separately with each state home based on the particular needs of that veteran, this bill would correct an unintended consequence in law that has negatively impacted certain state homes and consequently the veterans under their care. This proposal was spearheaded by my friend and colleague, the ranking member from Maine, Mr. Mike Michaud. I would like to thank him for his advocacy and his hard work in advancing this proposal and recognizing the great service that our state homes provide. Madam Chairman, Section 4 of the bill would improve the provision of rehabilitative care to veterans with traumatic brain injury by including the goal of maximizing independence and improving behavioral and mental health functioning within individual rehabilitation and reintegration programs. It would also require that rehabilitative services be included within any comprehensive long-term care services for veterans with traumatic brain injury. Many concerns have been raised by veterans and veteran service organizations that current law is being inappropriately interpreted to limit rehabilitative care for veterans with TBI to only those services that restore function. Madam Chair, it is vital that we ensure that the recovery process for our veterans, especially those facing a lifetime of cognitive and neurological impairment, is ongoing, unburdened by institutional barriers, and extends beyond a strictly medical model to include services that allow those struggles to advance functional gains and reintegrate successfully into their home communities. Madam Chairman, this provision was introduced by Mr. Tim Walz of Minnesota, a veteran and valuable member of our subcommittee on health, and I would like to extend my personal gratitude to him for his service and for this proposal. Section 5 of the bill would clarify the access of the rights of service dogs on VA property and in VA facilities. This provision, introduced by Mr. John Carter of Texas, would amend an outdated VA policy that has left some disabled veterans and service dogs the need to function out in the cold. Unlike guide dogs for visually impaired veterans, service dogs are not guaranteed entry at VA facilities under federal law. Recognizing the immense therapeutic value service dogs can have in promoting functionality and independence for our veterans, this provision would require that service dogs do have access to VA facilities consistent with the same terms and conditions and subject to the same regulations as generally governed the admittance of guide dogs on VA property. Madam Chair, Section 6 of this bill would direct VA to carry out a 3-year pilot program to assess the effectiveness of addressing post-deployment mental health and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD symptoms, through service dog training therapy. This legislation would allow for the expansion of promising and successful service dog training therapy programs currently in use at the VA Medical Center in Palo Alto, California, and the National Center for Excellence, the National Intrepid Center of Excellence in Bethesda, Maryland. Veterans participating in these programs have demonstrated improved emotional regulation, social integration, sleep patterns, and a sense of purpose and personal safety. The prevalence, Madam Chairman, of post-deployment mental health issues and post-traumatic stress disorder is rising among our veteran population, with over 190,000 veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan having sought treatment in VA for post-traumatic stress disorder. Veterans who struggle with mental health issues need and deserve the very best we can provide in care and treatment. Providing them with every tool necessary to reintegrate healthfully back into their families and home communities and achieve maximum health and wellness is one of mine and my subcommittee's top priorities. We must continue to explore new and innovative therapeutic options to alleviate the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, and I thank my friend and fellow New Yorker, Mr. Michael Grimm, for his previous service to our country in the Marine Corps and for his very strong commitment to moving this initiative forward to assist his fellow veterans. Finally, Madam Chair, Section 7 of the bill would eliminate the requirement for VA to provide Congress with an annual report on staffing for nurses and nurse anesthetists. This cumbersome and costly report was enacted almost 11 years ago. It is estimated to cost approximately $113,000 per year to produce. The report's intended purpose was to keep Congress apprised of recruitment and retention issues facing certain nursing positions within the VA. However, following that, Congress enacted Public Law 107-135, the Veterans Affairs Health Care Programs Enhancement Act, which fundamentally strengthens VA's ability to recruit and retain qualified nursing professionals through additional employee benefits and incentives. Reporting requirements included in this law, as well as a variety of other ways and means in which Congress can obtain such data, renders this report unnecessary. Further, for the last several years, the report has concluded that nurse staffing remains stable within the Veteran Affairs Department. Additionally, eliminating the burdensome reporting requirement does not in any way reduce other existing requirements for VA to gather information on nurse staffing from facility leadership, ensuring that such data continues to be readily available to Congress and other stakeholders. Madam Chair, it has been an honor for me to work with my colleagues in a truly bipartisan manner to move H.R. 2074 as amended forward, and I would like to thank each of them, particularly Chairman Jeff Miller and Ranking Member Bob Filner, Health Subcommittee Ranking Member Mike Michaud, for their tireless support on behalf of our honored veterans. Madam Speaker, I urge all of my colleagues to join me in supporting this important legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.
We continue to reserve.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I would yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Obviously, nothing is more important than the safety of our veterans, and this bill, H.R. 2074, contains many provisions to help improve that safety and health care of our veterans. We had, because of a report I requested as chair, the GAO gave a report on VA health care, actions needed to prevent sexual assaults and other safety incidents. That report found that veterans and employees were exposed to personal dangers, including sexual assaults, in the very facilities that should be protecting them. And, Madam Speaker, I think we ought to be more outraged given the findings of that report. You know, that report found that there were not just dozens of alleged sexual assaults that went unreported, not even scores of such assaults, but hundreds of them. Hundreds of sexual assaults alleged but not reported by those who had the obligation and responsibility to report them. How are our veterans protected when they can't even have a report of an alleged assault? What message does that give to people that the military cares about what's going on here, what's going on with their safety? That's who we should be going after here, by the way. It's very clear, the responsibility about reporting such assaults. And yet they were not in hundreds of cases. And that was only, by the way, at some selected study places. Who knows what the whole institution would have been discovered. I don't know that the VA has ever reprimanded any of those people. I don't know that the VA has ever said to the Veterans Administration that this will not be tolerated, that we're going to not only report on them, but investigate them and bring people to justice. I don't know that anything of that has happened. That's what this bill should be trying to focus on. What happens to those people who don't report them? What happens to the cover-ups? What happens to those who protect each other as people are assaulted? I'm not sure that we have come to grips with this issue. This report was outrageous. This report was incredibly, incredibly tragic. And all I find is we're going to do some process changes in here, and I support those, and we'll vote for the bill. But we're sending a message here to the entire 250,000 working agency of this government that we're not really concerned about them. We're not reporting them. We're not getting to those people covered up. We're not getting to those people who protect each other. We're not getting at those who have violated the law by not reporting such incidents. Let's go after that. Let's give our veterans some comfort that they are going to be, that their safety is protected. I would reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I associate myself with the comments of my colleague. It is egregious that there have been so many sexual assaults that have in fact gone unreported by the VA. I would encourage my good friend and his colleagues to work with us and provide amendments in any way that they see important to help bills like this strengthen the reporting requirements and to help us in an oversight and investigative response of this Congress, of which this Congress is trying to do more on the oversight and investigative side. The last Congress did very little, and even those under Republican administrations did very little. We are trying to re-engage the oversight and investigation side, and I think that it is very important that we work together, and I do commend my good friend for his outrage on this particular report that came out, and I will work with him in any way possible. With that, I yield to my good friend from the Staten Island area of New York, the 13th District, Congressman Grimm.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chairman Miller. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 2074, which includes the text of H.R. 198, the Veterans Dog Training Therapy Act. That's a bill that I introduced along with our lead co-sponsor, House Veterans Affairs Health Subcommittee Ranking Member Michaud. Special thank you to the Ranking Member. As a Marine combat veteran, it's a unique honor for me to see this bill considered today by the full House. Over the past 9 months, I've had the honor to meet with our nation's veterans who are now faced with the challenges of coping with PTSD and physical disabilities resulting from their service in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their stories are not for the weak of heart, and they're truly moving. With these personal accounts of their recovery, both physical and mental, and the important role therapy and service dogs played that inspired this legislation. The Veterans Dog Training Therapy Act would require the Department of Veterans Affairs to conduct a pilot program in VA medical centers assessing the effectiveness of addressing post-development mental health and PTSD through the therapeutic medium of training service dogs for veterans with disabilities. These trained service dogs are then given to physically disabled veterans to help them with their daily activities. Simply put, this program treats veterans suffering from PTSD while at the same time aiding those suffering from physical disabilities. Since it was introduced, this legislation has gained the bipartisan support of 96 co-sponsors. With veteran suicide rates at all-time highs and more servicemen and women being diagnosed with PTSD, this bill meets a crucial need for additional treatment methods. I believe that by caring for our nation's veterans while at the same time providing assistance dogs to those with physical disabilities, we create a win-win scenario for everyone. This is a goal we can all be proud to accomplish. And just as an added bonus, we provide these wonderful animals with a loving and safe environment. And that's why I strongly urge all of my colleagues to join in me in support of H.R. 2074, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from California.
I would yield to the ranking member of our Health Subcommittee, someone who served for 4 years as the chair and did so much good for our veterans throughout the nation, Mr. Michaud of Maine.
The gentleman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my ranking member, FILNER, for yielding.